Imagine this. You're sitting in front of a blank canvas, or staring at a blinking cursor on your laptop, or holding a guitar in your hands. And yet, nothing comes. The energy that once poured out of you feels trapped, like a bird beating its wings against an invisible cage. Now, what if I told you the block you feel isn't laziness, or lack of discipline, or even lack of talent? What if the real barrier lives in the darkest corner of your mind, the part you were taught to avoid? Carl Jung called this hidden force the shadow. It's the secret vault of your creativity. But it doesn't just store brilliance. It also hides shame, envy, anger, and fear. And if you don't face it, the shadow doesn't stay quiet. It clogs your creative river. Think about it. How many times have you procrastinated not because you didn't want to create, but because an inner voice whispered, "You're not good enough. You'll be judged. You'll fail." That voice isn't random. That's your shadow speaking through resistance. But here's the twist. What if the very emotions you avoid, envy, insecurity, frustration, were the exact keys to unlocking your unstoppable flow? This is the paradox Jung uncovered. The shadow is not only a prison, it is also the treasure chest. Inside the very darkness that scares you most lies the fuel that can reignite your drive. Picture this. A filmmaker who freezes every time she edits because she keeps comparing herself to others online. She believes envy is a curse. But envy, when owned, shows her what her soul truly longs for and pushes her to create what only she can. Or think of a musician who numbs his anger, afraid it will overwhelm him. Yet when he channels that raw edge into his lyrics, the anger becomes fire and his audience finally feels his truth. So here's the mystery. Your block isn't blocking you, it's guiding you. The resistance you fear most is the map to your breakthrough. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll discover the final shadow pattern. Jung himself warned about the one that quietly drains your creative life force without you even noticing. Miss it, and your art may always feel unfinished. But face it, and you'll never run dry again. Creativity is more than painting a picture, writing a song, or crafting a story. It's life force itself. It's the spark that drives innovation at work. It's the intuition that shapes your relationships. It's the courage to share your authentic voice in a world that often demands conformity. But here's a truth many creators don't realize. Your creativity is only as free as the parts of yourself you allow to exist. When whole pieces of you are locked away in the shadow, your drive is locked away with them. Jung described the shadow as everything we deny, repress, or reject in ourselves. For creatives, it doesn't only mean anger or envy. It also includes wild ideas, strange impulses, and unconventional visions society told you were too much. Every time you silenced yourself to fit in, a fragment of your creative energy got buried. Think back to childhood. Maybe you doodled in class and a teacher scolded you. Maybe you wrote stories and someone laughed. Maybe you dreamed of being on stage but were told to be realistic. Each wound left a mark. Over time, those scars became your inner censor, and that censor stands guard at the shadow's gate. Now, in today's world, this matters more than ever. We live in a culture of constant comparison. One scroll through social media, and the whispers begin. She's more talented, he's more original, they're more successful. Those whispers feed the shadow with doubt, making your block heavier and heavier. But remember this. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's your collaborator. Inside the shadow lies the raw material of your art, the emotions, contradictions, and hidden desires that make your work come alive. Without it, your creativity becomes safe, polished, maybe even pretty but lifeless. With it, your creativity becomes electric. That's why shadow work isn't optional. It's essential. It's the process of turning repression into expression, projection into authenticity, and inner conflict into fuel. When you bring the unconscious into awareness, you release the energy that was tied up in denial, and suddenly, the block begins to shift. Picture a writer staring at the page, unable to continue. Beneath the surface, it's not writer's block. It's fear of exposure, fear of being vulnerable. When that writer journals about the fear, naming it, Feeling it, the voice that was hiding underneath returns. Paralysis transforms into momentum. So here's a question worth holding on to. Every time you feel stuck, instead of fighting harder or waiting for inspiration, what if you paused and asked yourself, which part of my shadow is asking to be heard right now? Because sometimes, that question is all it takes to set your creativity back in motion. There's an old myth about a kingdom that once thrived in abundance. The streets were alive with artists, poets, and musicians. Creativity was everywhere. But one day, a heavy iron door appeared in the heart of the city. No one knew who built it or why. Behind it was a deep vault, sealed shut. Over time, the kingdom began to lose its spark. The artists still worked, but their creations felt flat. The music no longer stirred the soul. The paintings lost their fire. Something vital was missing. And every night, strange sounds echoed from behind that door, pounding, whispers, laughter, even weeping. Yet no one dared to open it. Jung would say this is the story of the shadow. The vault is where we lock away the parts of ourselves we fear. The strange sounds are the repressed energies demanding to be heard. And the fading vitality? That's what happens when a person or even a whole culture tries to create while silencing the shadow. Now let's bring this myth into the present. Meet Sarah, a graphic designer in her early 30s. She's skilled, she has clients, but every new project sends her into a spiral. Endless revisions, constant self-doubt, and the haunting sense that her work is only recycling safe ideas. At first, Sarah thought she was just burned out. But when she worked with a coach familiar with Jung's psychology, something deeper surfaced. Her shadow wasn't laziness, it was anger. Anger she had buried since childhood when she was told not to make a fuss or be too sensitive. That anger had become the pounding behind her own iron door. Unacknowledged, it twisted into self-sabotage. But when she finally faced it through journaling and through painting raw red strokes just for herself, her work shifted. Suddenly, her lines carried boldness, her colors pulsed with power, her ideas had edge. And her clients didn't just approve her projects, they felt them. The lesson here is simple, but it runs deep. The shadow doesn't block creativity out of malice. It blocks because it's holding energy hostage. And when you open that door, the very things you feared, anger, envy, grief, longing, become the heartbeat of your art. So pause for a moment. What's behind your iron door? What sound is pounding in the dark, asking to be heard? The shadow will never stop knocking. But instead of resisting, you can choose to open the vault and let it fuel your drive. Every creative block has fingerprints. On the surface, they look ordinary: procrastination, self-doubt, overthinking. But underneath, they trace back to the shadow. Let's look at the first 3 signs that your shadow is quietly shaping your creative life. The first sign is constant comparison. You open Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, and within seconds you're drowning in other people's work. Instead of feeling inspired, you feel that sharp sting of envy. She's more talented, he's more original. I'll never measure up. That voice is your shadow. The envy you feel isn't proof you're lacking, it's a mirror. It shows you exactly what your soul longs to express, but you haven't claimed yet. Projection, Jung said, is one of the shadow's favorite disguises. So here's a way to flip it. Next time comparison bites, pause and ask yourself, what do I admire in this person's work? Where is that same quality trying to emerge in me? When you use envy as a compass, it doesn't pull you down, it points you toward your hidden gift. The second sign is perfectionism. You tell yourself, I just want it to be good. But hours slip away, tweaking a single detail. Weeks pass, and you still haven't finished. Perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's about fear. The shadow whispers, if it's flawless, no one can hurt me. But perfection is a cage. Creativity lives in imperfection, in the raw brushstroke, the cracked note, the messy draft. That's where life breathes. When the shadow chokes everything with perfectionism, the soul of your art gets smothered. So set yourself free with a small act of rebellion. Give yourself 1 hour to make something intentionally messy. No edits, no polish, just let it live. Notice how you don't collapse when it's imperfect, and feel how the shadow loosens its grip. The third sign is emotional numbness. Sometimes the shadow doesn't shout, It hides in silence. You sit down to create and feel nothing. No spark, no emotion, just blankness. But numbness isn't the absence of feeling, it's the suppression of it. Somewhere inside there's grief, rage, or longing locked away. The shadow buries it so deep that your art feels like it's gasping for air. When numbness sets in, don't force yourself harder. Move your body. Dance, even if it's awkward. Shout into a pillow. Scribble chaotic lines with no plan. Let your body crack open the vault where the shadow hides emotion. Only then can your art breathe again. Comparison, perfectionism, numbness. These struggles aren't random. They're signals. Each one is the shadow calling you back to your drive. The shadow doesn't only show up in obvious struggles. Sometimes it wears clever disguises, patterns that look normal, even productive. But look closer, and you'll see how they quietly drain your creative fire. The fourth sign is the endless project cycle. You start strong. Ideas excite you. You sketch, you draft, you brainstorm. But before finishing, another idea steals your attention, and another. Soon your folders are full of half-finished songs, paintings, chapters. It's not just losing interest. It's the shadow distracting you with novelty, protecting you from the risk of finishing. Because finishing means exposure. Finishing means your work can be judged, rejected, or perhaps most frightening, truly seen. To break the cycle, pick one unfinished piece. Commit to bringing it to life. Not perfect alive. Finishing becomes your act of rebellion against the shadow's loop. The fifth sign is overconsumption of inspiration. You binge podcasts on creativity. You collect books on productivity. You scroll through tutorials and mood boards, searching for the spark. And yet, the more you consume, the less you produce. This is the shadow in disguise. It whispers, "Just learn one more thing before you begin." But readiness never arrives. Inspiration without creation becomes another cage. So, flip the balance. For every half hour you spend consuming, give yourself half an hour to create. Even something small, even something messy. Keep the river flowing both ways. The sixth sign is fear of visibility. You create, but you don't share. Or if you do, you downplay it. It's nothing special, just a hobby. Beneath that humility, the shadow trembles. Because visibility means vulnerability. But creativity is meant to be witnessed not always by the masses, but by someone, by a trusted friend, by a community, even by your future self. Visibility is how inner spark becomes outer impact. So this week, share one piece. Not for feedback, not for validation, just to let it breathe in the open. Notice how the shadow reacts, and move forward anyway. Unfinished cycles, endless consumption, fear of visibility. They're subtle but powerful traps. Left unchecked, they can stall your creative journey for years. But once you see them for what they are, they turn into invitations to reclaim your drive. Some shadow patterns hide so deeply that they don't even look like creative blocks. They disguise themselves as virtues, as personality traits, even as values. But beneath the surface, they quietly suffocate your drive. Let's uncover three of the most hidden ones. The seventh sign is the helper mask. You're always available for others. You help friends brainstorm, you give endless feedback, you cheer everyone on. On the surface, it looks generous, but inside, your own work gathers dust. This is the shadow using service as a shield. By pouring energy into others, you avoid confronting your own fear of failure. Helping feels safer than creating. The way forward is simple but challenging. Claim sacred time for yourself. Block 2 hours for your project this week. Treat it with the same loyalty you give to others. Notice how guilt rises, how discomfort tugs at you. That's the shadow trying to pull you back. Stay with it. The eighth sign is the identity trap. Maybe you're the funny one, or the responsible one, or the organized one. These roles keep you safe, accepted, predictable, but creativity often demands that you step outside of them to be messy, chaotic, even unrecognizable. The shadow loves identity because it keeps you contained. The moment you try something that contradicts your role, it whispers, "That's not you." people won't get it. And so you stay in character, but your creativity stays in chains. Try loosening the grip with play. Create as an alter ego. Give yourself a new name, a new style, a new voice. Step into that mask and see what it frees in you. Sometimes pretending to be someone else helps you discover more of who you really are. The ninth sign is the shadow of success. This one is sneaky. Sometimes it's not failure you fear, it's success. Success threatens comfort. It shakes old identities. It changes relationships. So you unconsciously sabotage momentum, staying almost there, but never arriving. The shadow convinces you it's safer to stay small. After all, if you never reach the peak, you'll never have to face the fall. But here's a way to break the spell. Imagine your success in full detail. Not just the achievements, but the discomfort too. Who might envy you? Who might drift away? Face those fears consciously, so they stop running you unconsciously. These hidden signs, the helper mask, the identity trap, the fear of success, don't just block projects, they block transformation. Because real creative drive isn't about finishing a piece of art. It's about becoming more of who you truly are. Noticing the shadow is just the first step. The real change begins when you give it a voice. For creatives, the most powerful way to do this is through journaling and embodied practices. These tools let the unconscious speak without censorship. Let's explore a few you can try. Start with a shadow dialogue. Open your journal and begin a conversation. Write, "Shadow, why are you blocking me?" Then let the words flow. Don't filter, don't edit. Even if what comes out feels harsh or strange, let it stand. Often, the shadow reveals its real motive: fear of rejection, fear of shame, fear of being powerful. When you give it a voice, you turn it from enemy into collaborator. Next, try the envy map. Write down 3 people whose work sparks envy in you. Then ask, what exactly am I envying? Their boldness, their honesty, their consistency? Envy isn't poison. It's a mirror. Each quality you envy is a quality you're ready to claim. Circle one trait and design a small action around it. If you envy someone's raw honesty, write one page where you hold nothing back. Another practice is the emotion release canvas. Take a blank page, a canvas, or even a voice note on your phone. Pick one emotion you usually repress: anger, grief, longing, and let it speak through color, sound, or words. No rules, no audience, no goal. You're not making art. You're setting energy free, and often that release unlocks breakthroughs in your other projects. And finally, a daily shadow check-in. Each night, ask yourself 2 questions. What moment today made me shrink? What moment today made me overreact? Write 2 or 3 sentences for each. Over time, you'll see patterns, and those patterns reveal the exact places where your shadow keeps stealing your energy. The point of these practices isn't to fight the shadow, it's to befriend it. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Shadow work flips the script. Instead of being ruled by blocks you don't understand, you use them as creative fuel. And when you practice regularly, something shifts. The blank page no longer feels hostile. The guitar no longer feels heavy. The canvas no longer mocks you. They become playground spaces where every part of you, even the dark ones, is welcome. Up next, let's step into the arena where the shadow hits hardest: love and relationships, because nothing mirrors our hidden self more clearly than the people we love. If you want to know where your shadow hides, look at your closest relationships. Love, friendship, intimacy, these are the mirrors that reflect our unconscious patterns most clearly. And for creatives, they matter deeply, because the state of your relationships often shapes the state of your drive. Think about projection in love. Jung explained that much of what we adore or can't stand in others is really a reflection of what we've disowned in ourselves. That's why relationships can feel intoxicating one moment and unbearable the next. They shine a light on the shadow. Picture a painter falling for someone bold, outspoken, unapologetically raw. Secretly, that's the very quality she suppresses in herself. At first, It feels magnetic. But soon, she starts resenting that boldness, calling it too much. Admiration turns to conflict because the shadow has stepped into the room. Here's a way to work with it. The next time someone close to you triggers a strong reaction, pause and ask yourself, what part of me am I seeing in them that I've denied in myself? That single question can turn irritation into insight and insight into art. But it's not only conflict. Sometimes the shadow shows up in people-pleasing. Many creatives shrink themselves in relationships to keep the peace. Think of a songwriter who edits his lyrics so his partner won't think he's too dark. The songs become polite but lifeless. Approval comes at the cost of authenticity. Try creating something this week that you don't show anyone. Not your partner, not your family, not your friends. Create purely for yourself. Notice how freeing it feels when expression doesn't wear the leash of approval. And here's the paradox. While relationships expose our shadow, they also awaken hidden treasures. Falling in love, or even forming deep friendship, can unlock passion, vulnerability, and raw energy. All of that becomes rocket fuel for creativity when it's owned consciously. Think of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. Their relationship was turbulent, full of shadow clashes. And yet, out of that turbulence came some of the most powerful art of the 20th century. The goal isn't to seek chaos, but to recognize that shadow energy, when channeled, can amplify your fire. So let me ask you, what quality in someone you love triggers the strongest reaction in you, admiration or criticism? Could it be a clue to your own shadow? And where in your relationships are you leaking energy by pleasing or performing? What if reclaiming that energy could reignite your creative drive? Relationships are not distractions from the creative path. They are amplifiers. Through the lens of shadow work, they stop draining your energy and start feeding your art. Next, let's turn to another arena where the shadow often plays tricks: work and social life. Because the masks we wear there can either suffocate our creativity or set it free. Creative blocks don't just show up when you sit at your desk or in the studio. They follow you into meetings, collaborations, even casual conversations. Work and social life are fertile ground for the shadow because these are the places where masks are strongest. And where there are masks, the shadow is always close by. Think about the persona at work. Jung used that word persona to describe the mask we wear to function in society. At work, maybe you're the reliable one, the smart one, or the easygoing one. These masks help you fit in, but they also smother the parts of you that don't match the role. For a creative, that's costly. The wild ideas, the unconventional sparks, the uncomfortable truths, they get censored before they're even born. The shadow collects them like contraband. So here's a way to notice it. Ask yourself, at work, what mask do I wear? What qualities do I hide to maintain it? Then try weaving one of those hidden qualities into your creative work this week. You might be surprised at the energy it unlocks. Now, think about collaboration. Working with others can multiply creativity or bury it. Have you ever held back an idea in a meeting because you feared sounding silly? That's your shadow silencing you. Or maybe you dominate conversations, cutting others off. That too can be shadow projection of your own insecurity. In your next collaboration, try this. If you usually hold back, share one idea you'd normally censor. If you usually dominate, ask a real question and listen fully. Both small shifts weaken the shadow's grip on group creativity. And then there's social life. Outside of work, the shadow hides in how you spend your time. Do you say yes to every invitation out of fear of missing out? Do you scroll endlessly, comparing yourself to curated images? Or do you retreat completely, avoiding people under the excuse of being too busy? Each of these extremes leaks creative energy. Too much noise and you're drained. Too much withdrawal and you're uninspired. The shadow thrives in both. So take a look at your week. Circle one commitment that drains you and cancel it. Then add one activity that actually nourishes you, something playful, grounding, or inspiring. Protect your energy the way you protect your art. Work and social life aren't separate from creativity. They shape the ground your creativity grows in. When the shadow dominates these spaces, your drive gets hijacked. But when you see the patterns clearly, you reclaim your freedom, even in the middle of deadlines and dinner parties. Now, let's step into a more subtle trap, one that tempts many spiritual and creative people. It's the urge to avoid the shadow in the name of staying positive. Jung called it spiritual bypassing, and it may be one of the most seductive blocks of all. For many creatives, spirituality walks hand in hand with art, meditation, affirmations, rituals. These can ground you, inspire you, even heal you. But there's a hidden danger. When spirituality is used to avoid the shadow instead of engaging it, it becomes a trap. Jung called this spiritual bypassing, and it can quietly starve your creative drive. Think about the illusion of only light. You tell yourself, I must stay positive. You repeat mantras about love and abundance. You push away anger, envy, grief, because they feel low vibration. On the surface, you look calm, but inside, the shadow grows restless. Creativity doesn't thrive on light alone. It needs contrast, light and dark, sorrow and joy, order and chaos. When you exile half of your emotional range, your art becomes thin. The shadow doesn't vanish because you chant over it. It waits, it leaks, and eventually, it blocks. So try this. In your next meditation or ritual, don't push away the negative. Invite it in. Breathe with it. Then channel it into your notebook, your canvas, your instrument. Notice how much more alive your practice feels when the shadow is welcomed, not banished. Another trap is the chase for constant transcendence. You keep reaching for higher states, ecstasy, flow, bliss, while avoiding the raw struggles of daily life. But art is rooted in soil, not just in sky. A poet who only writes about bliss may sound pretty, but the words feel hollow. Without dipping the pen in pain, the work lacks depth. So give yourself permission to create something unspiritual. Write about jealousy, paint your loneliness, sing your rage. Let it be raw and unfiltered. That release often unlocks the most authentic energy. And then there's what I call the guru shadow. Sometimes, instead of trusting your own vision, you lean too heavily on teachers, influencers, or gurus. Their voice becomes your script, but your personal voice gets muted. Inspiration should spark you, not cage you. So here's an experiment. For 1 week, limit your intake of spiritual or motivational content. Instead, sit in silence. Ask yourself, what do I believe without anyone else's words in my mouth? Create from that space, and watch your unique voice rise. Spiritual bypassing is tempting because it feels good in the moment, but over time, it drains the raw energy that makes creativity real. Jung reminded us that wholeness isn't about being only light. It's about embracing the dance of opposites. Next, we'll step into Jung's deeper philosophy, the idea of the collective shadow. Because the shadow doesn't just live inside us, it also lives in the culture we create within. So far, we've explored the shadow as something deeply personal, your emotions, your blocks, your hidden drives. But Jung believed the shadow doesn't stop at the individual. It also exists in groups, in cultures, even in entire societies. He called this the collective shadow, and for creatives, understanding it is essential. Think of history. Every culture celebrates certain traits, strength, productivity, beauty, and pushes others into the dark weakness, idleness, imperfection. But those rejected traits don't disappear. They gather in the collective shadow and resurface as prejudice, scapegoating, or cultural blind spots. And this matters for you because you don't create in a vacuum. You're swimming in that cultural sea. Take today's world. Productivity is glorified. Rest, daydreaming, slowing down, often dismissed. Yet those are the very states where creativity takes root. If you unconsciously absorb society's shadow, you'll shame yourself for resting, and in doing so, you'll cut off your creative flow. Artists have always been mirrors for the collective shadow. Picasso painted the horrors of war. Toni Morrison gave voice to repressed histories. Modern filmmakers reveal hypocrisies we'd rather ignore. These works resonate because they don't just show personal truth, they uncover truths the culture is afraid to face. So ask yourself, what truth do you see in the world that others avoid? Even if it's small, sketch it, write it, sing it. By facing not only your shadow but the collective one, you expand your drive and your art begins to serve something larger than yourself. This connects to Jung's ultimate vision. His goal wasn't perfection, it was wholeness. To be whole is to embrace contradictions, dark and light, personal and collective, individual and universal. For creatives, this means your work doesn't need to be flawless, it needs to be real. The raw edges, the imperfections, the uncomfortable truths, that's what makes it alive. When you integrate your shadow, you stop fighting yourself. When you engage the collective shadow, you stop fighting blindly against culture. You create work that questions, disrupts, and heals. At that point, creativity is no longer just self-expression. It becomes contribution. The shadow isn't just your personal block, it's the hidden current shaping humanity itself. And as a creative, you stand at the edge where the personal meets the collective. When you create from that space consciously, your drive is no longer just yours. It becomes part of something bigger. Now, let's bring it all together with one last invitation. A call to face your shadow, claim your drive, and step fully into your creative path. We've traveled a long way together, from the blank canvas and the blocked page, through envy, perfectionism, and numbness, into the subtle traps of identity, relationships, work, and even spirituality. At every step, the shadow has been there not as a curse, but as an unacknowledged guide. Here's the truth that keeps rising to the surface. Your shadow isn't here to destroy your creativity. It's here to complete it. The very emotions you've tried to hide, anger, envy, longing, fear, are the fuel your drive has been waiting for. Think back to the myth of the iron door. Behind it were sounds the people feared. Yet when Sarah, the designer, faced her anger, her art grew bold. When the songwriter embraced his darkness, his music caught fire. When you open your own vault, your art doesn't just survive, it comes alive. So let me ask you, what part of your shadow are you ready to face this week? What block can you turn into fuel? Write it down. Create something from it. Share it or keep it private. Just don't let it stay locked away. Because here's the paradox Jung revealed. The more you integrate your shadow, the more whole you become. And the more whole you become, the more unstoppable your creativity flows. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to become someone else. Everything you need is already within you, waiting in the shadow. So, take the step. Pick up the brush, the pen, the instrument. Open the vault. Let the shadow walk beside you, not against you. Turn the block into a breakthrough. And if this journey stirred something in you, if you felt recognized, inspired, or even challenged, stay connected. Follow along. Keep exploring. Keep diving deeper. Each step reveals more. Your creativity is not broken. It is waiting. And when you welcome all of yourself, the light, the dark, the contradictions, you will never run dry again. This is your invitation. Step into your shadow. Step into your drive. Step into your art.